I do see this place as a place of such magic and imagination and play and lightness, and really exploring the power of those things. I took life really seriously for a long time, and only the heavy stuff was valid. And there's so much power in lightness and fun and joy.
Welcome to the StarShip Writers Room, a podcast that gives you an up-close look at the creation of the Starship universe.
We talk new characters, hash out plot points, and imagine possibilities that are truly out of this world.
And which you might see featured in the StarShip NFT game,
a play-to-earn cryptocurrency game set in outer space.
I'm Melanie, the Starship lore champion, joined by my co-host and fellow Starship lore creator,
Spazzitron of CryptoPhoenix.org.
Welcome to our 5th podcast recording of the StarShip Writers Room. Unfortunately, this week, again, Spazzitron will be unable to join us, but he will absolutely be around for the next one. We always appreciate his contributions. He's doing a lot of work behind the scenes, and so I look forward to having him back so that he can present his work more fully to us in our informal podcast setting. Melanie, it's really good to be here again with you.
Yes, it's always so good to be with you, Shooty. And just so everyone knows, it's official. Shooty is an official co-host, as he should be. We always love having you with us. And I was just editing our last episode, and I just love all the themes we were talking about, and our conversations always go super deep. So that's something I'm really grateful for and inspired by. Good.
And that is usually how we kick off our weeks, is that inspiration word you just used. So I'd like to just a little bit of inspiration on my end, and then maybe a little bit on your end, if I could be a little bit revealing. So I've been looking at a lot of the other metaverses, not to give too many business shout outs, but two of the big ones that are there's a lot of hype behind. There's probably a bunch right now, but TCG World on the Binance Smart Chain, and then Cornucopias on the Cardano blockchain. I know that Cornucopias is a little more far off, but there's a big community behind it. And so there's a lot of art being created and excitement about NFT drops. And it's easy at this point in my involvement in the team, in the project, as far as Starship goes. I'm looking, they have TCG, for example. They got Jason Page singing a song that sounds like basically a modern version of the Pokemon theme song, done by the original person who sang the Pokemon theme song, Jason Page. And it's very okay. And then they have an artist designing their NFT creatures that is, his name escapes me, I believe Michael something, and he has worked with, Marvel Comics, and he's all over the NFT space already. And it's inspiring to see the level of talent and interest and professional hiring that is going on for promoting various projects, and also the level of crowdsourcing. And it's kind of one of those moments where it's okay, am I good enough for this? They've got this guy and they've got this guy, and then it's well, I'll try and write a really good universe, guys. I'll probably, But then at the same part, I'm at a point in my life. I do feel the things I'm sharing on our shared site are innovative and provocative and real and engaging. And so there's a voice inside of me that's also no. They may have this person, but Starship has me. I'm very excited. I'm excited about what I have to offer. And there's a part of my, my inner spirit that is able to come to this unashamed. And that's a big deal for me. That's not that I haven't been, cowering behind a rock for 20 years. But I think all of us, there's a point in creation in this, in the young creation of the Starship universe, for all the people that we talk about, like sourcing ideas, crowdsourcing and all of that. This is a good opportunity for other people, just like me, to kind of step up and be like, you know what? No. Who cares what else is going on? I have the opportunity to put out something really cool here. And so I'm gently inspired by that part of the human spirit. I don't mean to be like egocentric and be like, I'm inspired by myself. No big deal. I'm killing it.
You are killing it though.
Oh, that's really nice of you to say.
True.
And so that's sort of my soft inspiration today is that we all get to a point in our lives, and for many of you out there, maybe you're not quite there yet, but I hope you're coming to some part of that point in your life, and if doodling a creature or drawing a little vignette of something that goes on with Wilbur in his truck, if it helps you feel more confident about what you have to offer, I really, really love that Starship is bringing that opportunity. So that's it. Mel, I would love to hear what little inspiration or a fun idea that you've had this week.
Well, that was definitely inspiring for me, truly, because I really feel that imposter syndrome. But I also, like, for a long time, I was living, it was just kind of, that's it, with my creativity, lots of kind of keeping it to myself and not being kind of out in the world as a creative, and self-doubt and trying to be sensible and trying to be safe and secure kind of stopped me for a long time from pursuing my dreams, as a, big creative person. And now I'm at the stage where I definitely still feel that little imposter syndrome coming up, but I am just kind of observing it and just, pushing past it, not trying to quiet it, but not letting it stop me either, acknowledging that it's there, honoring that that's a part of myself that still feels safer when I'm unseen, and saying, yeah, this is going to be better than okay. And we're just going to move beyond this discomfort and move with this discomfort and see all of the expansive, magical, creative dreams we can realize. So it feels good to be in that space where it's still a little bit, where that creeps in sometimes, especially the comparison and and I love it. Like, I feel like you can look at someone doing great things in, close to your space, like if it's in the same industry or, something completely different, to be honest. But the comparison piece really can come in, and I feel like I can use that to feel like I need to shrink, or I can use it to grow and like, oh, look at what they're doing, and I feel like we're all here to be exactly who we are. And so if someone else is doing something great, that's not diminishing in any way the great thing that we can offer.
Right. That is hard to accept. Yeah. And I have a fun thought on that comes from yoga. A person once asked the wise guru, what is, and I'm kind of making a parable out of something that actually happened. It's actually a quote. But a person asked, this very wise kind of senior person, what do you believe is the ultimate cause of suffering? Right? There's a good question. And without missing a beat, the guy, the guru, responds back. He says, the separation between you and me. So there's this concept that the ultimate cause of all suffering is just this feeling of looking at you as something other than me, or better than me, or, you know, or who I used to be, you know. And I don't mean to get into that, because I really do want to talk about the Paradise Planet and the Ocean Planet this morning. So that's just you know, just kind of we'll throw that out there, leave it on the table. But, you know, the concept of otherness, that, you know, we're somebody other than who we're meant to be, or we're somebody other than who we used to be. We spend a lot of time in our own heads comparing, and I'm grateful for yoga for helping me understand all of that and sort it through, and come to a more reasonable emotional relationship with that sense of otherness.
Yeah, I think for me that showed up a lot as I should be doing something else other than like what I'm really called. There's no way I can make a living or anything like that doing like what I'm truly called to do. So I spent many years like almost really nurturing the backup plan and spending all my time and energy on that. And that was like total self-abandonment. And it was like kind of really only like, I'm a little distracted because Princess Consuela is scratching at the doors. But,
her cat, everybody.
Yeah, my little blind cat that I'm looking after. Yeah, but I think the kind of core of what I was doing was I was seeing other forms of success as more valid than what would be me just showing up in the world as myself. And since I've been consciously doing that, I feel the most fulfilled that I've ever felt.
I'm lit up right now. This past month and a half has just been crazy. Like the creativity, and my wife supports me, and the people I'm talking to about this they light up and they're like, "Oh my God, that's amazing! You get to be involved," you know. And it's and it's just like you said, we spend enough of our lives abandoning ourselves, thinking we're trying to find ourselves, and so that exact thing, because I share it, you share it, Spazzitron shares it, maybe. I know we're not alone on this team, just within this StarShip team. I think that is going to be kind of a central theme of the StarShip universe, and Lord Albright's ascension to power is exactly that. Again, like the common thing, you know, Peter Quill at the end of Guardians of the Galaxy 2, when he's like, okay, I am the son of a god. Like, let's throw off the shackles and let's take this power for a run. I want to get into, before we keep waxing philosophical for another 30 minutes, I want to, along those lines of unshackling creativity and just you and me talking about stuff, regardless of who may or may not be listening, I want to get into the Paradise Planet a little bit. So you presented in an idea that is very impractical and wonderfully imaginative, and I don't want to put a cap on that. I want to uncap that. You presented the idea of, what if the Paradise Planet is the rarest of all planets, and you can't even set foot on it without your intentions being harmoniously aligned with whatever the energy of that planet is, you know, however we think of it, good or truth, or, you know, and so as horribly impractical as that would be for for a regular old video game to have every single Paradise Planet where you literally fall through the ground if you're not, you know, whatever. As a concept, I don't want to put any limitations on that. I want to explore that. So can you talk to me a little bit more about what you're thinking as far as at least this specific Paradise Planet, this specific rare, you know, Elysium, whatever you're describing? I'd love to hear more about it.
Yeah, so I have actually just pulled up my notes, and I also let Princess Consuela in, and now she's purring on my lap. So that should be a distraction over.
I thought I felt a little more calm somehow.
Yeah. So I feel like what I see, and yeah, like you said, this is a specific planet. So what I see is, firstly, like there's just, it's like magic on this planet. You know, it's the thing that doesn't make logical sense but feels right, and you know it to be true. So for visitors coming to the planet, I imagine them kind of like entering through this like fjord, and it's kind of sussing out their whole makeup, like their whole soul's, I think, current state, or like the current progression of their soul or something.
Like a snapshot for an airdrop.
Right. So and then based on that, it could shoot you off into another planet that's more in resonance with your intention. So obviously I'm thinking of the metal planet, and I mean, I think about the metal planet a lot.
That's good, because I don't.
Yeah, that's funny. And I was thinking of like, maybe they only have these kind of portal connections to other worlds that have like life force energy on them. So they would only have it to the metal world if the metal world had the life force energy, life forms, basically.
That kind of plays into like, you can only see what you want to see. The Paradise Planet, while you're on it, you only have access to see the planets that you're resonant with. So it can be almost a bit of blindness.
Yeah, I mean, you know how kind of like when you read something and it just doesn't resonate with you, and then 3 years later you could read the same exact thing and it's like changed your whole life, you know? But it's a lot about timing and about being ready and having certain experiences that shape your whole worldview, really, before you can really receive that other piece of information. So I definitely see that playing into it. And I do love the idea of it, like, I love the idea of it being actually of a higher life form than that which is purely physical. So I really like the idea that it can materialize into the physical plane, but it's actually like a consciousness beyond physical.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where they can kind of use this, the kind of local life forms can use this as a defense if they, you know, if there's a visitor to the planet and they're just like, okay, well, your vibe isn't welcome here, basically.
Right. Your presence is a virus to us.
Yeah, and it's like in violation with our values, and we don't do anything except for go into our higher form, and in doing that, you know, the planet is no longer solid, and then, you know, but then I also had the idea of like, of this kind of fjord in the beginning that of like there's a particular entrance to the planet, and there are like portals to other worlds, especially the natural worlds the Paradise Planet loves, I feel. And so that kind of conflicts a little bit with that, because I don't think the visitor would get as far as being on the planet, but it could also be something like kind of like a little comedic thing where, you know, there's a visitor on the planet and the life forms are just so used to being able to be in the non-physical space that they kind of go non-physical, and then the physical life form visiting the planet is like, hey, like, I'm now falling through space, please make this stop, you know?
Oh yeah, like they just don't even know what it's, they forget about the tangible human experience or whatever, right? Like, hey, a little help here. Yeah.
Yeah. And I also have the idea of like, they really do love the life forms that, you know, I'm kind of using the distinction of like life force energy to talk about organic life forms, as opposed to something like the metallic life forms, which I imagine are driven by something that's different. And also because like, I guess, as opposed to saying like natural life forms, just because we're creating a lot of different life forms. So like
that's true.
What's natural, what's normal.
What is natural?
You know? So I think they really look at the beings of the paradise planet really look at those beings with that life force energy, which, the paradise planet beings have life force energy. But what I mean is the physical beings who haven't necessarily ascended to that space where they can be non-physical. They kind of look at them with a lot of love, and as if kind of we're looking at our child self, just like also admiration, like, wow, you get to like experience the physical and work only within those boundaries. And because there is so much growth to be had there. Whereas on the paradise planet, I see that being as kind of a place where there's not necessarily much in the way of self-development, because these beings have already ascended. They've already kind of amassed all this experience and growth, and that's like where their paradise is kind of where they're waiting for the rest of the souls in the universe to ascend, so then they can all kind of form this collective consciousness, which I really like that idea that the paradise planet is like a collective consciousness. And then the next step would be, once the other souls in the universe have ascended there, then they all unify and basically create that source energy, that oneness.
Yeah, I love that. So one of the aspects that I'm kind of working on and developing is, in our shared thing, is like, what can we tie down a core concept to each of the 10 planets that represents something about, and this is where it's a little bit limiting, but in a good way, like it gives us focus, that is sort of about an element of human existence, or something like so that when we're trying to conceptualize and attach ourselves to a planet, that we have a little more draw to it. So kind of in order of rarity, the grasslands planet we've talked about being the essence of it is communication. So like the elemental association of the wind and the ability of us to our ability to communicate just what's inside of us and put it out into there in a way that can be received. And thinking about the next rarity planet, desert, how fun would that be if life, the quality to go from a little bit of something to a lot of something, or to just expand and grow. So this gives a lot of a fun idea from a lore perspective of like paradox. It's a desert planet, yet it's about life. Like, so we're conceptualizing, thinking of using it for pirates, because they're attracted to the quality of life. They want to rob it. They want to take it. Or the idea of like a variation of a desert planet, or a lore story beat where there's a kudzu area, as we joked about a couple episodes ago, where there's a hippie civilization that's like, if you aren't burning down trees, you aren't even helping the planet, man. They're trying to destroy this overgrowing, like abundant life, or even just an insect culture that is trying to settle into the desert planet or something. These are all like kind of life-oriented concepts. For the swamp, we're thinking of like guile or cleverness, like a tenacity. For ocean, psychic connection that really aligns with water and kind of what that means to us as humans. When we get into paradise, like crystal planet, for example, I think more than anything can represent consciousness, because that's the crystallization of finally making that leap from the ethereal, like intangible, to the tangible. Like it crystallizes. It's a very wonderful like metaphor for the formation of consciousness. So it lends itself like innately to that. But also what you're describing as paradise also has something to do with consciousness. And I wanted to, as you were talking, I'm writing down a few different words about paradise that might help us nail down, like, what is that concept that paradise is? And I've been thinking along your lines that it's sort of related to consciousness, but a different aspect of it, like the expansion of consciousness or the process of enlightenment. Because to have consciousness is one thing, but then also to like ascend within that is also sort of another thing, you know? But the specific word that I wrote down, and this could be really fun to unpack, it contradicts a little bit of what you're talking about now, but this is just spitballing. This is writer's room. This is like whatever, no ideas are out. But the word that I have written down is magic, like the things that are behind the veil, like what's really going on behind the scenes. And that sort of presents in the energies of like elevation of consciousness, but also like it could be really fun from a sweeping lore perspective, that the most magical things that you find in the Kyanite universe are going to be on the Paradise Planet, floating islands and fire-breathing rabbits, and you know,
Yes.
And of course beings of almost pure consciousness that transcend our logic. And that's why I wanted to write down the word magic, because it's like the things that transcend our ability to even put them into words. You know, is a good kind of lump word for that.
Yeah.
Or you also said being ready to see. You know, you're not able to align with the energies of this planet, so you can't even see it the way we do, you know? So being ready to see is a little bit different from being conscious, isn't it? You know, and so so I thought that something in there, you know, magic or kind of being ready to believe, or just sort of align yourself so that you can see clearly, kind of thing.
Yes. Well, I feel like what helps me is looking at it paired actually with the metallic planet, which I think is the polar opposite. So the metallic planet, the main value is information, and the difference with the Paradise Planet is that the Paradise Planet values wisdom. And I think the difference between information for the sake of information and wisdom is wisdom brings not only the head into it, but it's also the heart. So it's like the wisdom to know what to do with the information. How will it serve the highest good, for example? So I think that kind of plays into a little bit of, you know, wisdom isn't necessarily pure logic like the metallic planet is. So I think there's a lot to explore with that. And I totally agree with the magic piece. Like, I do see this place as a place of such magic and imagination and play and lightness, and really exploring the power of those things, because this might just be my own projection, but I feel like, you know, I took life really seriously for a long time, and only the heavy stuff was valid. And
yeah,
there's so much power in lightness and fun and joy. And that's
not that I know
really
you.
see.
I know what that's like, is what I meant. No.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I feel like this is only like a relatively recent revelation that I can actually have fun. So I see that a lot in the Paradise Planet. And also I wrote down like a little strap line that they're like, it's like the planet of the guardians. So it's not that there's no conflict, you know, because a lot of us writing a story is, what's the conflict? Where's the action? You know? So it is this place of peace and beauty and joy. And at the same time, they do have the wisdom to be able to assert themselves, to defend themselves. I think there's an expression along the lines of like, you can't really have, or something about, you know, fighting for peace, and that seeming like a paradox, but it's like when you hold something in because you want to keep the peace, you're not keeping the peace. You're you're holding in the conflict for your own self, So yeah, it's this place that kind of integrates the shadows and the lightness of existence in a really beautiful, healthy way. So I do see them, they can be like great warriors, and they're fighting for that life force energy and for the progression of people, I should say, like creatures with life force.
Right.
Yeah, for their soul progression.
I find that I think that as you're describing it, I think there's a lot of synergy with the Grasslands Planet tribes as we're thinking about it, because from an Earthling perspective, the Grasslands Planet is relatively peaceful, idyllic, and virtuous. These are people who extol communication, and what that does is create a sense of harmony and flow between the tribes, and a lack of war, a lack of escalation to violent outbursts. And so, one thing that I have said to my yogis in my class about the juxtaposition of vulnerability and strength, we think that to be hard is somehow antithetic to being soft. That if I stretch my, I encounter this every day as a massage therapist. If I stretch and soften myself, somehow that is logically antithetic to creating strength. But in fact, when you soften in the right balance, it allows your blood, your nerves and your organs to flow more freely. And so there's this juxtaposition that, what is strength good for, except to hold space for us to be soft and vulnerable. The strength of our borders, and I mean the borders of a house, I'm not trying to get political, the strength of the borders of a house, so that you inside can be absolutely vulnerable and just be yourself with your family, And so there's a seeming paradox between strength and vulnerability, but in fact, they allow the other to thrive. Like, what is the point of strength if you don't have a soft, warm heart in the center? It's lifeless. And so the logic of the metallic planet in a big way can be antithetic to the like, you don't need to see everything. You don't need all the facts for true wisdom to come through. They might logically be antithetic, but with true wisdom involves a little faith, a little like hiding all the facts, not being able to see everything that you think you need to see,
Because it's like following your feelings too. It's being in touch with your emotions and with your intuition, which I think the pure logic way that manifests on the metallic planet, it's like totally rejecting of emotions. So that's not ideal.
Right. And that's, yeah, we haven't talked about it in a podcast quite yet, but the metallic planet is going to be a nasty place, like not fit for human life.
Yeah, they and again, this is a specific type. So I did think about it, like what would it look like for a metallic planet that was maybe a higher rarity and that did maintain a healthier balance or obtain a healthier balance. And I was thinking that's kind of like that's really a question I ask myself a lot in my own relationship with technology and social media and screens is, what is the healthy balance? Is there an interdependence that can be achieved that where I'm really using these as tools that serve me rather than kind of being, glued to them in a way where I'm really giving away my own free will, my own experience, my time, my sense of what I can achieve and, my power. So that's obviously what I'm exploring on the metallic planet.
I think that that could be, when we're talking about engagement and thinking about getting people engaged, I think that, whatever kind of word or words we're using to tie down paradise, elevation, enlightenment, magic, this sort of whatever we're tying in with that, I think definitely metallic as the antithesis to that, very useful, because I think for people being engaged in the game who are going to be drawn to the metallic planet, it'll be for the same reason, but on other sides of the coin, because the metallic seems to represent, as we have it so far, artificial intelligence. It's very tied into the Matrix, the rage against the machine, man. Like we're afraid of it. It's so cold and calculating that it becomes like its own kudzu. Like you can get lost in it. You can become a part of it. And so there's also this element of like Star Trek, the Borg. It was the first thing I thought when I was reading your notes. I was thinking, this is like the Borg, like relentlessly assimilating the universe, and terrifying. And within the game as it stands right now, deploy StarShip, the NFT game, metallic is the third rarest of the planets. And so maybe in a storyline, we're encountering this specific iteration of a metallic planet. But also within the game itself, that they haven't had as much time to assimilate and conquer and spread. And so maybe that helps us to have a timeline of when we are discovering, or when we are interacting, when we are encountering this kind of universe, because there might be an eventuality to it, a war, because like I hope you're still following me, because I'm thinking about, if the grasslands and the ocean are kind of like the mother and father, neither being one or the other, but kind of being both, if they're like the mother and father of the universe, there's a timelessness in that. If crystal is consciousness, there's a timelessness. And paradise, how long have they been floating there waiting for us to be ready? But with metallic, there's a mission, like what you're introducing has inertia behind it. These metallic artificial intelligence, like they're assimilating life and trying to unify it in that terrifying, like Chronicles of Riddick kind of way. That's a good central theme for a lot of. I just watched not The Last Jedi, The Force Awakens, Star Wars Episode 7 movie, and it's that same concept. They view the rebels as evil because they're trying to unify the order of the universe. And so I view the metallic as a big antagonist, but for that very reason, I think a lot of players, might secretly really enjoy aligning themselves aligning themselves with the metallic planet to be a part of that power. There's some people are House Slytherin, man. So maybe with the last few minutes, a sneaky peeky at some of the other ideas we're working on.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so we've talked about in our past podcasts. I brought up a little bit about grasslands in our first one. I know we delved heavily into swamp for the second, gas for the third. Last week, what did we talk about?
Yeah, last week we were talking about, so I feel like we were talking more about overarching themes last week.
Okay, so this week we're talking about paradise. So what we have left is magma, ocean, desert. We still have to touch on crystal. That's kind of a figurehead podcast. I want to make sure we're all three of us here to really unpack crystal, because it's a flagship. So ocean, one of the big thoughts, psychic energy. I have when we create like predators and prey and civilizations within the concept of an ocean planet that is somehow cohesive, right? Like how does it where's the gravity, where's the land masses that keep the ocean flowing or not, and what kind of creatures. So I imagined a dual race where they're just similar to the swamps, how there's the alligators and the bat race kind of vying for dominance, and maybe like from time to time overthrowing each other temporarily. But in the ocean planet, we've got this dominant race of, I haven't like totally thought it out, but I didn't want to just go with mermaids again, because as I mentioned, everybody does mermaids, right? But what about like a half octopus, half jellyfish kind of race? And in some iterations, it's more jellyfish. In some iterations, it's more squid or octopus-like. But that being one dominant race, and then another being like this shark, this roaming, like beast-like, like elephant size or maybe smaller kind of shark race. And whereas one race uses their psychic power to kind of band together and create strength and unity, the sharks kind of use their psychic awareness to spread out and mark their territory. So like they're all the sharks are aware of where the other sharks are, and they sort of keep an ecosystem balance of not being all in one place, so that they can spread out the food, you know?
Whoa.
But the concept within ocean, like there's a terror, there's a helplessness to being a human being in the water. They're all, you know, at least on our planet, there sure is. And I had this kind of tagline for, you know, what would it be like to create a world where psychic energy is the dominant force? And I thought about it, that as a human being, if you set foot in that water, here's the tagline: if you have a reason to be afraid of it, it already knows you're there.
Oh.
So we need to invent sort of an NFT that's sort of like a mind block, so that it dampens who we, you know, are thinking, so that we can go undetected, so that we don't constantly get eaten by the roaming sharks, you know, who already know we're there.
Oh my gosh. Chilling.
We have Gaslands as fear, or Gaslands, the gas planet, as the concept of fear and terror and the chains and the gas vapors of the unknown and the toxic quality that fear can be. So I like that word and that concept associated with that, although nothing is set in stone. We're all still able to change things up. But I thought that would be interesting. And then magma planets, I've already hinted at it in another episode, sort of what I'm, because I'm kind of in charge of grassland, ocean, and magma right now. And magma planets, part of what I'm thinking about is discipline, intensity, and strength. Rather than the fire's, you know, rage and uncontrollable volatility, I'm thinking about more like we've reached a point in magma where it's a little bit mastered, it's harnessed. And so the most common iteration for magma planets would be to find an engineering and like fortress kind of like kingdom or civilization that allows you to forge equipment and armor and weapons up to epic status. So commons, uncommons, rare and epic. And then you need a rarer iteration of the magma planets, one where the Tauros, this mighty race of blacksmiths, where they exist, and they have the legendary and mythic forges for components. Like Kyanite, its use on Earth is as forging equipment, so it holds it can hold heat and sustain heat enough to be able to be a vessel for other molten metals. And so the idea that this magma planet is the hardest, steeliest, most intense distillation of kyanite force, so that it's able to hold in its embrace or as a framework, it's able to forge the entire universe as far as the practical physical manifestations and all of that. And I think that covers all the planets. I don't have a list in front of me. I wasn't counting, but that sort of gives anybody who's listening kind of like right now and wants sort of an overview of where are we going with this. That kind of gives a little bit of a more succinct idea for anybody who's listened all the way to the end kind of thing.
Yeah. So I was just thinking, I know you have to shoot off.
I do.
Shooty has to shoot off. Do you want to mention anything that you'll be looking at this week?
Yeah, this last week I went real hard into developing NFT kind of ideas and just kind of spitballing and taking all the various ideas. So I don't want to sneak peek any of that because we haven't had a chance to really talk it through. But I kind of like a push and pull thing. If I focus too much on one thing, I like to swing back the other way. And so this coming week, I want to talk about with you two, you and Spazzitron, I want to talk more, get back into a specific story, a specific lore, like an event that happens on the ocean planet. Because I think I've moved away from tying it to specific story, and I'm trying to develop, a whole world in a sense. And I think it's a good ping pong to go back and forth because creating a specific story has a lot of spontaneity and it doesn't get us too tied in, Yes. I think creating too specific a story is how we avoid really fun situations like being able to fall through the paradise planet, It's impractical, but within the concept of a specific story iteration, it's wonderful. It's perfect.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think, I want to spend this week, for me personally, at least, my contribution. I want to get into some fun, the adventures of Faye and the Ronin is what he says.
Yeah, well, actually, I have, I was going to also work a bit of story. So using the snippets that Spazzitron has sent through. So he has written a bunch of scenes, and I'm basically kind of putting those in order and creating a short story from those. So I might just start with putting some notes together, and then maybe I'll send you what I have, and we can, the three of us, contribute to that if you're interested.
Yeah, what if by the end of the week we had sort of a loose outline of all of our story beats in order, and Faye and the Ronin, and at the end of it, perhaps the ascension of Lord Albright,
Yes. Yeah. All right. Well, we got something to look forward to.
Right. For all you listeners.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I don't know if I should thank you anymore because you're an official co-host, but I'm going to do it anyway, so.
No, I appreciate it. And this is such a passion for me. I'm thrilled to be able to have an opportunity to create. So once again, linking the email, lore@deploystarship.com. If you've got any of your little snippets, you listener out there, send it by, have fun, just let your heart out. Don't hold back, journaling to yourself, and then submit the journal entry to us, for fun, for passion, for creation's sake, be a part of it, Yeah,
and do it in the way that's really easy and accessible for you. Don't hype it up in your head that I need to set a whole day aside for this submission.
Everybody needs to like this.
Yeah. Send what's on your heart, what's on your mind, what you've been noodling on, what you can't get out of your head. Get it out of your head onto a page or whatever, a screen, and send it over.
Mm-hmm. What a pleasure, Melanie. Thank you again. I am 10 minutes behind where I wanted to be this morning. Right.
Thank you so much for your time. Yes, and I will get out of your hair, but I'll text you in the Telegram chat.
Oh, if anybody sees me, I don't have hair anymore. Oh.
I'll get off of your scalp then.
All right. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. You too. Before we wrap up this episode, we just wanted to give a quick shout out and thanks to Dritz, who submitted a fleshed out story of our moonshining hero, Wilbur. So,
yeah, Dritz.
Yeah. So I'll just start with an excerpt and then we're going to talk about it. One day, while out on his porch smoking one of his fine handmade cigarettes, a thought occurred to Wilbur about how he could make some more money so that he could retire when the time came. He would expand his moonshining business. He had been so focused on staying within the comfort of his surroundings, perhaps being a little too apprehensive of the outside world to go exploring. So Wilbur had failed to see the bigger picture. There's a whole world out there, he said out loud to himself as he sat rocking back and forth in his rocking chair. I could make a ton of money if I can just find the nerve to get out there and do it, he continued. So that's exactly what Wilbur did. As he sat there with his rolled cigarette nearly burned down to his fingertips, Wilbur began to think of ways to expand his business. The next day, he needed to head into town to stock up on his moonshining supplies and pick up a few more bags of tobacco and rolling papers. As much as he enjoyed his solitude, Wilbur did look forward to heading into town. You would think living in the backwoods of Tennessee, he wouldn't actually know anything about the outside world, but that would be incorrect. A common, albeit somewhat accurate, description of a country bumpkin such as Wilbur is that these folks are all uneducated and dim-witted. Not so. Country folk may not be educated like a fancy lawyer, but they are innovative and can make almost anything with the scraps of metal and wood lying around their homesteads. And heading into town gave him the opportunity to catch up on the world and say hi to the town folks, as well as stop by and read the technology magazines that were in the local newsstand. While standing there glancing over an article about space exploration and how these starships are flying people around the galaxy but are having a hard time finding enough fuel, a thought occurred to him. Why not build something that can convert moonshine into fuel? He whispered to himself. I'm sure I can do that, he continued to say as he put down the magazine and headed to the hardware store across the street. While in the store, Wilbur picked out the needed supplies for his moonshining business, but also some parts he thought he could use to make something for his truck that would convert moonshine into fuel. After gathering all the needed materials, he loaded everything in the back of his Ford F-250 and headed home. Once back at the homestead, he started to piece the components he bought at the hardware store together in such a way that he believed would work. He understood alcohol can be used to aid in ignition, and he also understood about combustion, given he was routinely fixing his truck's engine and moonshining equipment. All right, what do you guys think?
I think that's fantastic. That's really cool.
And I don't know Dritz at all, but surprisingly well written. There's a lot of really subtle, intelligent decisions in there. Like it's good writing. I dig it.
Yeah, it paints a scene. It's really well.
Totally.
That's what I mean. That's what I mean to say. He did a really good job painting the scene. One thing I really liked, it's a little bit, it's written from Wilbur's point of view, and he calls it a technology magazine. It's not like the local whatever quarterly.
Mm-hmm.
He calls it what he would call it. Like in his hometown, be like, why do we even put that on the magazine rack?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He's the one person that gets it.
Right. We use that to catch the oil.
Also earlier in the story, he's talking about how he's been doing this hard labor all his life, and he's just now starting to notice the creaks and aches and pains in his body. And then he's like, I feel like there needs to be something else for when I can't do this hard labor anymore. And then he starts just like opening himself up to these, like, what am I going to do? Okay, I'll expand my moonshining business. I'll get out of my area. And then he's got this great idea, so Wilbur, this guy, kind of like in the story says, you might not expect it of him, but he's clearly an entrepreneur and he's going to make this moonshine into a fuel. So I just think it's so creative and so much fun. And it's a character we wouldn't necessarily expect to see in a science fiction.
Yeah, and the only reason that I had the thought of like we could at the very least we could use some of this like for Grandpa's backstories, because I envision because his starship is different and his control chair or his flight chair is like a rocking chair basically, and when I saw the rocking chair in the story, I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, like
that's so fun. That's so perfect.
You think Grandpa is using Wilbur's rocking chair?
Oh, it could even, yeah. There
like
could
they
be,
could,
yeah.
They could have met.
They could have met. Yeah, there should be crossover because just something. The rocking chair just like really stuck out to me.
Yeah, there's definitely something there.
What I thought of right away is that Wilbur has actually become a microcosm for all of it. Like his kind of sneaky desire. He's looking around. He's like, man, I'm not going to make it following the rules. Listening to the council. It's just not going to work out. And he looks around, he's like, what could I do to, get a little outside of the edge, like blur the lines a little bit outside the law. And, essentially this is Lord Albright going against the council to rescue Faye and possibly, whatever Faye and the Ronin have been up to. It's a little bit of like, it's the rebellion. It's everywhere from the lords at the captain of the starship all the way down to the moonshiner out in the middle that nobody's paying attention to,
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, so clearly...
Sorry, not in the middle of nowhere, in Hohenwald, Tennessee. Right?
Yeah, get it right, okay?
No offense.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you so much, Dritz, for this awesome submission. You've clearly got us talking and thinking about a lot, so we really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of StarShip Writers Room.
If you have an idea for the Starship lore, we would love to hear it, and you might even get a shout out on the pod.
Simply send it to lore@deploystarship.com.
That's LORE@deploystarship.com.
We hope you have a stellar day,
and we'll see you next week.